Right, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public or press who have joined us today, either in person or watching via the live stream, to this meeting of the Communities, Social Mobility and Inclusion Committee at New Shire Hall at Alconbury Weald. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures, tweet or blog during the meeting. But could I please request that the members of the committee and public turn their mobile phones to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest marked fire exit and assemble in the car park. So item number 1 is notification of chair and vice chair. Would the Democratic Services Officer notify the committee of the appointment of chair and vice chair?
Thank you. On the 21st of May 2024, full council appointed Councillor Tom Sanderson as the chair of the Community, Social Mobility and Inclusion Committee for the 24-25 municipal year, and Councillor Alex Boulat as the vice chair.
Thank you, Nick. Item 2 is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Could you just report on any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you. Yep, there were apologies from Councillor Ambrose Smith, and Councillor Count is here as a substitute.
Thank you. Welcome, Steve. And does any member... Sorry, Steve Criswell.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, apologies from Councillor French as well. She's had a last-minute appointment, so there's no substitute. Thank you.
That's noted. Thank you, Steve. And secondly, does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? I can't see any, so we'll move on to item 3, which are the minutes of our meeting held on the 21st of March. So we've been asked to approve those as a true and correct record. Can I ask you if any member disagrees with those minutes at all? No. Do we have any questions at all? None. Okay. Sorry, Jeff.
Actually, I haven't got my act together here, Mr. Chairman, but there were a couple of things that I'd asked for information from last time, and I don't think it's in the action log. So one of them was a split on the administration and substantive costs on the Citizens Advice Bureau. I think that was one of them.
Thank you. Was there something else as well? All right. We'll make a note of that and come back to you, if that's all right. Yeah, Lisa, sorry, yeah.
That update on the breakdown of the funding should have gone out as a member briefing around about May time, but I can follow that up and reissue it if it wasn't received.
In that case, my apologies. I didn't miss it.
I'll make sure it went out to all members of the committee.
Thanks.
That's great. Thank you very much. So on that basis, the committee is happy to approve the minutes. We will do so on that basis. And item 4 is public questions and petitions. We've not received any public questions or petitions for this meeting. So item 5, we'll go straight to our Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Strategy Action Plan update. We have Faye McCarthy, who will be joining us. And she's our business partner. So Faye, over to you.
Thank you very much. So this paper provides an update on the progress of the EDI Strategy Action Plan. The action plan is split into 3 themes: workforce, communities and services. And within each theme, there are objectives and then actions underlying each of those objectives. The action plan spans across 4 years, and each action has been RAG rated using the key in table 1. The action plan is a live organic document, so we will respond to changing priorities and needs and update it accordingly. And the action plan is regularly reported to the EDI Leadership Forum, which is quarterly and presented to this committee every 6 months. This is the first update on the action plan. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Faye. Any questions from members? Steve, then Philippa.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report. 6.3 Community Toolkit. I'm just puzzled as to why it could take till 2027 to develop a toolkit, which on the face of it could be extremely useful to community having links to local help and assistance. I just couldn't understand why the finish date was 2027. Is there no way we can bring that forward, please?
Thank you. I was just going to point out, I think that timing is sort of the span of using it rather than developing it, but I'll hand over to Lisa in case Lisa wants to add to that.
Thank you, Faye. And also to recognise that this one is obviously rated red as well at the on the plan at the moment. So I've spoken to Jill Buckingham, who's the head of service for communities, about this point, and she feels that this can actually be accelerated. She has been working now with Jack Ossel, who works in the policy and insight team, and together they are starting to develop those data toolkits. So the 2027, I think we can link with Faye and bring that forward.
Thank you, Philippa, and then I think Jeff, you were next.
Thank you. It's an observation and a question, particularly about Objective 4, which is mainly on page 37. I like the wording of it because it's developing and empowering our people, designing and delivering, and the way you introduced it to as being a live document and a live programme, which will be responsive, I hope, to the things that councillors can contribute as well as that officers are doing. There was just a factual question, which is, how do you find out where the EDI hub is? That's one thing. And the other is something I'm very keen on making sure is heard by as many people as possible in many different places as possible. But I had a very good meeting with Cherin and Will from Connecting Cambridgeshire, because I am very concerned about digital exclusion. And I would like it to be in our minds as an element of learning disability rather than anything else. And it is the sort of thing that will remain a barrier for people. It isn't just a matter of buying a device for somebody and eventually the ones who don't know how to do it will have died off. It's not that simple, because the IT, almost the invisible technology, is very difficult for some people to grasp and to stay good at. And I was really encouraged by the way those two young officers responded to what I was saying. And I would encourage all councillors to collect anecdotes of people who've got in touch with us and have got services far too late because there were barriers. And there is something unique, I think, about IT type barriers, because they are bang like that. You know, if you're not quite understanding a bit of French, you find your way to the end of the sentence. You sort of get the, you're not quite sure what went wrong with a bit of cooking or how to change a wheel on a car. You can see the technology, you can see the language, but there is that mysterious inner devil lurking in the IT for a lot of people, and it is both traumatic and sad that we are excluding people like that. So we must always keep that in mind, that some people will not find it as easy to get to services. So it may simply be a matter of having a bit of a toolkit, encouraging groups to always have a phone number. And these can be text and message receiving phones, so that you don't have to be on the phone 24 hours, but to have a phone that will take messages and give them can be a big breakthrough for people who need to talk and be listened to directly. So that's a bit of a rant, I'm afraid, but it is very important, I think.
That's fine.
Bear it in mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. Jeff, and then Alex.
Thank you, Chair. In making these remarks, I hope I'm not going to appear negative. I think we all support the EDI policy as been set out, the strategy, but we all want to know that it's working. And certainly in businesses, or the business that I'm working in now, we know it's not working by the number of complaints that we receive about people who feel in some way excluded or other. Now in 2.2, which is, I think, page 56, is it? Sorry, 28, sorry. You know, we've done an employee survey, and we're told employee survey analysed significant findings related to underrepresented groups. I mean, this is just one example. My first question, I suppose, is do all the analysis of the questionnaires follow that, in subsequent sections? Is that what the significant findings are? So if you go to 2.3, it says, I'm not succeeding in doing it at the moment, but it's saying 66% were positive and 20% were neutral and 25% negative. Is that the significant finding, or are there other findings? And are we presumably monitoring this? We're going to be getting and carrying out those surveys from time to time so we can see how employee responses change. But at the end of the day, a survey is not that reliable. The most reliable thing about an EDI policy is when it's demonstrated to be working, that there are no complaints. So I just wonder whether and how we can be assured that we have set a policy that is being adhered to.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, did you want to respond to that one, Faye?
No, thank you. Thank you for those comments. In terms of the staff survey, there was one finding around minority ethnic colleagues that we are following up on, and that is now sitting with our anti-racism steering group. So we're using that information to feed into what we'll be doing next around that. And then all of the other survey findings that relate to this are included in the action plan, as you said. So we're absolutely monitoring that. And if and when future surveys happen, we'll be looking at those as a baseline to compare that to as well.
Satisfied that the survey, I've no doubt they're conducted professionally and so forth, but I mean, are they reliable? People's responses in surveys, unless they're brought out,
Sue,
it's more than
Sue Grace would just like to come in at this point. Jeff?
Thank you very much. And just to say, the staff survey was carried out independently by Ipsos, Carrion and Box, who are a professional organisation that carries out surveys across the public sector. So, and they have a robust methodology, and with the percentage return that we had across the entire workforce, including questions related to equalities, diversity and inclusion, then they have given us an assurance that we've got a confidence margin which is relatively high from the survey. So we have previously put together a briefing note on the feedback we've had from Ipsos, Carrion and Box around the confidence rating relative to the percentage return. So if it's helpful, we can ensure that that's circulated to this committee as well. So you've got an assurance about the robustness of the survey, and we've got a commitment to carry out the staff survey again in 2025, so that we can actually, against the baseline, including the baseline around equalities, diversity and inclusion questions, we can actually see whether our actions are making progress. But we do have a whole rich network of groups that meet and other ways of interacting with staff during that period. So we're not, even though the survey is robust, we're not wholly reliant on the survey as well in terms of our contact and feedback from staff to ensure that the actions that we're taking are actually addressing their concerns and meeting their needs. Thank you.
Just quickly, no, I'm assured by that, and that's very, very helpful. Thank you. But I do want to ask the question, maybe it's not something that we should be seeing here, I don't know, but I mean, are there active complaints in the system at the moment which are being acted upon? I mean, is this something that we should be concerned about?
So I'm happy to answer this, and Faye, do please amplify this. So colleagues in the HR service obviously develop and implement with the rest of the colleagues across the entire council policies that enable staff to come forward with concerns, either concerns about how they've been treated or their experience within the workforce. We've also got other processes where staff can identify if issues are related to equalities, diversity and inclusion of concern in relation to them delivering a service, because sometimes it's about the interaction they may have with a resident. And so we have different processes that both capture what happens within the organisation and outside of the organisation when we're supporting our residents and our communities. So yes, we do have those processes, and those processes are supported by our professional colleagues in our HR service. And obviously we've got ways and means in which managers are trained in the use and deployment of those policies as well to support staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've got Alex followed by Ros.
Thank you, Chair, and it's good to see a more detailed report and action plan since the last update. I'm really pleased to see the progress on including the care experience as a protected characteristic. And my question around that was around the care experience working group and to what extent this is led and informed by people with lived experience. I assume it will be a combination of staff and perhaps getting some views from people with care experience, but I was wondering to what extent the lived experience feeds in that working group. And then on the issues around migration and working with different communities, again, really pleased to see the work with the Traveller team as well as the Hong Kongers as well. But when I was reading this, and there are references to some specific groups, and of course, I recognize we do a lot more work on specific schemes like Hong Kongers or Ukrainians, for example, but I couldn't help but think, shouldn't we mention perhaps some other groups that we feel might be underrepresented, perhaps? I always have an issue when looking at this, white other category, because this can mean, for example, people identifying as Roma, people who are Eastern European, which are particular sizable population in some parts of our county divisions as well. So I was wondering if we, for the next update, is worth thinking a bit more about breaking down the various migrant and ethnic minority communities, especially in those categories, which might be, I guess, overarching categories of white other, but you can be white other in, let's say, be a Romanian in Finland and have a different experience to being a white other American in Cambridge City, for example. So I was just reflecting on that point. But thank you very much for the report, and I'll be keen to hear more detail about the care experience, as well as how do we look forward to including various ethnic minority groups in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Ros, you're next.
Yes, it's great to see an action plan. I have 3 questions. One is, in terms of recruiting, you talk about using recruiting on diversity pages, and I was wondering, is there also some sort of experimental and testing approaches? So, for example, do you try one type of thing with one group of jobs and try something else to see which works most successfully? Because just sort of deciding this is the route may not be most effective. That was one question. Sorry. The next one was then there were 2 more about data. So one is, where we don't get complete data, do we just take the data we've got? So if we've only got 70% data, and that's saying 50% of people are like this and 50% of people like that, is that just the total? Yeah. What do we do with incomplete data? And then finally, do we know what we're aiming for? Because it is really complicated within populations and demographics, and it varies presumably across the county and for different job types. So yeah, there's a lot of data there, and do we know where we're going and what we can kind of what the end? Well, there probably isn't an end point, but how does that work?
Thank you. Happy to come in on some of these points. Did you want me to respond to the care experience one first?
Whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So
Yeah,
in terms of from Councillor Bullock, I was just going to mention, with our care experience working group, we do have colleagues who work directly with our care experience young people, and we have sought views from care experience colleagues as well. There's still a lot more we need to do around that. And also we are looking at how we use our forums and participation groups as well to seek views to input into any work that we're doing, because that is really important. In terms of the recruitment piece and I suppose trialing things in different areas, that's something that we are doing. So we're looking at piloting different things for different areas to test things out. One example of that is anonymous shortlisting. Another example is giving out interview questions before to candidates before their interview. So just things like that we're testing out to try and ensure we're creating an inclusive approach to recruitment. But testing it out in different areas. So that's something that we are doing. In terms of incomplete data, do you mean to the workforce, what we do with that? Just to clarify, okay, yeah. So we've got our disclosure rates in terms of colleagues who prefer not to say, or colleagues who just have missing data. So we'll use the data that we know about to inform our actions. And what we're trying to seek to do is try and increase awareness around what we're using that data for, so that colleagues feel that they can trust the organisation and they can disclose that data, and then hopefully we'll get a bit more confidence in terms of the levels of disclosure there. And the third one is around targets. I don't know if Sue wants to come in on this. We do look at our community data and compare that to our workforce data. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say around targets, Sue.
Yes, and again, as we're doing right across all of our indicators, as we develop the indicators wherever possible, if we can benchmark our performance against others, so that actually we've got a sense of whether we're aiming for something that feels realistic. And I think it's certainly one of the absolute benefits of having with the staff survey, which obviously encompasses things which are much wider than equalities, diversity and inclusion. But by using an independent organisation like Ipsos, Carrion and Box, then they do work across the public sector, so they can provide public sector benchmark information around workforce related issues. So wherever we can, that helps to inform what we're doing and what we're aiming for, to feel that that seems reasonable with respect to both our working communities, but also with our workforce. But obviously that's an ongoing piece of work to, I think, address the question of what we're aiming for. Is it realistic? And how does that sit alongside other people who are working in this arena, or other county councils, or our statistical neighbours, for example? So thank you.
Thank you. Just before I bring Claire in, I just want to ask a question on page 24. And a couple of amber highlighted tasks there. And I just wondered, is it realistic? Will we ever actually get these to green? I mean, I'm looking at the one on second from bottom, develop and include a revised positive action statement in our job descriptions. And it says it's ongoing. Sorry, no, it's the one above that. Continue to publicise our roles on diversity jobs pages. If we're doing that, or if it's ongoing, would we ever get that to green? It would seem if we're actually achieving that, then that could be a green item. I just wondered how we're measuring it and how we would move it forward.
Thank you. Yes, that is an ongoing piece. I suppose it's us continuing to monitor that, so that then we can introduce new actions to address some of the things that may come up from that monitoring process.
Thank you. Claire, you're next.
Thank you. I have two questions, and one on 6.1 and one on 6.2. So 6.1 is very interesting, the text here. I'd just like some more information on how you're going about that, how you are going about empowering communities to help themselves. You said, for example, working with local organisations. I don't know if there's a sort of, if you could give a specific example. And then under the progress log, you actually mention local campaigns, for example, in East Cambs. If you could give just a bit more detail on those 2 points. And then on 6.2, in relation to the library services, equality of access. I noticed that you're working on a new EDI action plan that's in development for the library service. But I'm sure one of the areas of inequality is access to the services full stop. And that means access through the mobile libraries, and how that's going, and the spread of the mobile library service across the county. So maybe you could perhaps answer that as well.
Thank you for the question. So in relation to 6.1, I will ask Jill Buckingham to follow up on the East Cambs example specifically, because I don't have the detail on that. But certainly one of the approaches that's being taken by the community service in this area is to work with our voluntary sector partners, so Hunts Forum and in Cambridge City, CCVS, to utilise the Support Cambridgeshire banner, and to bring people into volunteering roles and to explore things like the trustee positions. And we've got the new volunteer portal as well, where we've actively encouraged people to sign up to the site We've done campaigns across the council as well, and also with providers to get them to put their vacancies on. And Support Cams told us just last week that they've achieved, since they went live earlier this year, they've achieved 100 successful matches today in that area. So I think it's work that's it will be ongoing, and we'll continue to grow that. But we can also offer support to local groups where, for example, they might want help with establishing a constitution, the role of a treasurer, that kind of thing. We can provide advice and guidance on as well. But I will come back specifically on the East Cams point. And then the second part on 6.2 in relation to the libraries and the EDI action plan. I have had sight of the EDI action plan, which is for the service specifically. And it does take on board the points that you've made about things like the mobiles. What it's also done is pulled down information from the Quality of Life survey, where we've been able to see the groups that aren't accessing library services at the moment at a postcode level. So that kind of information has been incorporated by the service in the plan as well.
Thanks very much for that. So in terms of the accessibility to library services and the postcode and the groups that are not accessing it, and we've heard about that in another place, it would be really helpful to know, not now, maybe outside the meeting, how much of that inaccessibility to library services is due to location and how much is due to other factors. Thanks.
We can certainly take that away.
Philippa and then Jeff.
Yes, with your forbearance, if I could actually make a question that goes with what I was saying earlier, and it would be, because I've seen you trying to answer questions, in the next committee, and I'm hoping I can get some sort of response. Would it be practicable to require of those groups that we commission or encourage or in any way support that they have phone access to their services? Because I think this is going to be a key thing. I've seen this in, for example, the Repair Cafe, which I looked into and got involved in. It's something that we commission and is splendid, but without a phone, it excludes a lot of people, and some of the people who really could do with something particular being mended. Not phone, obviously, though we're quite good at phone, mending lots of electronics. So is it practicable? Because that is to keep that bridge. Because I think we can assume most people can use a phone and can either speak or even or leave a message by text. And that is absolutely vital, I think, to bridge the gap. So if officers could come back to us on that, I'm sure we can all think of examples of services that do need that bridge. Thank you.
Just for clarification, if that refers to services that we offer directly, then that is absolutely what our contact centre is there to provide, and there to provide across all council services. And obviously the contact centre will also take inquiries, even if people contact us about something that we don't directly deliver. They link into our district council partners and other partners, voluntary sector partners, in order to pass people on who may inquire of something on the phone from us that actually is delivered through elsewhere. So it's absolutely the purpose of the contact centre to provide that safety net. So there is always a county council number that can be contacted by someone who is comfortable using the phone but not comfortable using other digital devices, for example. So I don't know if you're asking though about something else other than
I'm
that.
afraid I'd assumed that we were doing it. It's more the people that we are in partnership with or are encouraging, the sort of, as Claire was saying, in the communities that we're using through Supporting Cambridgeshire or whatever. Can we ask that question? Because people may not think to ask it of themselves, in my experience. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We'll take that away. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippa. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. At the risk of being called a pedant, which I am, and on the reliability of figures, I'm going back to, which I meant to mention en passant before, on 2.2, we've got baseline statistics. And if you look at the very first one, we've got 111% of responses, or those who responded totaled 111%. So I suspect that we probably need to adjust the figures if that's going to be our baseline.
Okay, that's a good point. Good spot. Thank
That's
you.
a point, but a good one, I don't know.
It is. That's fine.
Just come back.
Yeah,
on-
sure.
I will double check, but if that relates, sorry, I'm just trying to flick to the right point that you're referencing.
It's 28, I think 2.2, just
Section
it was one of the
2.2.
examples that I looked at, but
So certainly some
2.3, I beg your pardon, 2.3.
2.3. Thank you. I'm just pulling that up. Yeah, so sometimes
It could be a typo. It could be
sometimes in some of the surveys it counts beyond the 100% because sometimes people have more than one job within the council, and so it's actually asking people with in relation to a role. So it actually takes it's the figure goes beyond 100% because actually it's beyond 100% of staff by head count because we're looking at it in different roles. But I will double check exactly what the background is to the 111%.
I think the others are 100%, but
yeah.
anyway,
Yes.
it's
So
either a typo or there's a reason for it.
we
So
can clarify that for you. Thank you.
thanks.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further comments or questions, Faye, can I thank you very much for your time? Lisa, you just wanted to make a comment? Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. If I could just come back in on the East Cams point. Somebody has just sent me the information to confirm it was the Voluntary Community Action East Cambridgeshire group. So it's a voluntary sector organisation group that is specific to East Cams that we as the County Council and other partners have supported to run a local volunteer campaign.
Just very quickly, when you thank you. The County Council is supported in terms of funding or personnel or both?
Personnel.
Thank you. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. If there are no further comments or questions, I can't see any hands up. So we've noted the status of the actions in the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy Action Plan. Thank you very much. And thank you, Faye, for your time and for presenting the report. Thank you. So we'll go on to item 6, which is the Finance Monitoring Report, Outturn 23-24, and that's Sue. In fact, it's Martin Wade. Good afternoon, Martin.
Good afternoon, and thank you, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. So yes, so this is the Outturn report for the financial year just ended 23-24. As noted at 3.1 on page 54 of the report, at the end of the 23-24 financial year, the revenue budgets within the remit of this committee reported a total underspend of £350,000, and the reasons are set out in the following paragraphs as to where those underspends have arisen. I don't think really there's too much more to say in terms of that, so happy to take any comments or questions on that particular Outturn report.
Thank you, Martin. Do we have any questions at all? Jeff?
Sorry. Yes, thank you. This is one that probably shows that I don't have an overall picture of the budgeting process, but I just wonder whether the underspends have been absorbed into this year or they're still available. I doubt that they are, but I was particularly looking at trading standards because Councillor Boulat and myself proposed motion at last full council on the subject of allergens, which will need cooperation and work by the Trading Standards group and team, and I don't know whether that has actually been funded. So I was quite interested to know whether we could have any of this underspend if it's left over, but I don't imagine it is. But if not, have we provided funds to allow, or can we allocate funds to for Trading Standards to take forward that particular motion?
We can ask the question.
Okay, so obviously usually what happens in terms of carry forwards is all the carry forwards end up in the overall council's reserves. There are instances where, depending on the specific purpose, there might be what we used to refer to as earmarked reserves for specific pieces of work which will carry on. I'm not actually sure in this instance, obviously, what the situation is with the Trading Standards. Obviously, we go through the annual business planning processes, which is where obviously the investments and proposals come through. In terms of that, I don't know if Sue or Lisa have any more insight into Trading Standards specifically, or it's something we can obviously take away to look at.
We'll take that away to look at to ask that precise question. Thank you.
That's a very good way of standing up for your motion and making sure we follow through on it. No, that's fine. That's a very, very clever. Claire.
Thank you. I've got two questions, both on libraries. So page 57, the library's open access and touchdown and the Everyspace Library Improvement Fund. So maybe could you explain a little bit more about what's going on with the open access and touchdown fund? Because it's being used to create suitable spaces for other services across libraries. Where are we with that? Is it just simply that there's been a delay, or is that the reason for the underspend there?
Can Lisa will come in at this
The
point?
second one? Yeah, okay.
Should we do the first one and then actually, Lisa, if you go first.
Certainly, thank you. Yes, so the funding has been rolled into the 1.3 million for the library improvements this year, and work has begun to look across the library estate alongside the accommodation improvement programme at where best to invest that money. And we will certainly be able to bring an update shortly back to committee about the progress on that work. But we are looking at investment imminently, really, towards the end of this year.
And a similar question on the Everyspace improvement. Project's running 9 months behind to meet the procurement exercise and compliance commitments. Maybe a bit more information on that.
Can certainly provide an update on Everyspace. So the March project has actually just completed, and we will be looking to reopen that space early August, I believe, and there will obviously be invites out to members to come and view it, and to council officers as well. In terms of Cambridge City, I believe that the procurement has now commenced, and I know that there was an on-site meeting that actually took place last week, so that is starting to move, and we are expecting that work will happen later this year as well.
Everyone's very well behaved this afternoon. That's very good. But thank you very much, Martin, for that first item. We reviewed and commented on the finance monitoring report outturn 23-24. We'll now go on to item 7, which is for May 24.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so this is the first finance report of the new financial year, and as you can see, the opening forecast for 24-25 is currently showing as a 0 variance on to the end of May. However, as noted in 4.2 of the report on pages 60 and 61, in the first financial monitoring report of the new financial year, we routinely ask committees to endorse the roll forwards and the rephasing of the capital schemes. As they are budget movements, as it says, the decision will be taken by Strategy and Resources and Performance Committee. And obviously, due to the timings of when the various committees are, sometimes they do get slightly out of sync in terms of those conversations. So obviously, Strategy and Resources was earlier this week on the 9th of July. In terms of that, but we still ask the committee to endorse those capital roll forwards. As you can see, the only scheme that this relates to in the remit of this committee is the Community Capital Fund, where the carry forward and rephasing results in a revised budget of just over 1.7 million for the current financial year. So again, I'll pause there and take any comments or questions.
Anybody? Jeff, I can see you.
Well, I've now remembered what the other question I had on the minutes were. Wouldn't you know it? And it's to do with the Capitals Priority Fund. And I think that we were going to get an update on progress on that, weren't we? And you're going to tell me that was in the other.
I'm not going to tell you that we've done that already. That would not be true. So it's been left in the action log as ongoing, and we will provide an update. I can say that some of the projects have actually started. I think we've actually got a couple that have finished, and the only reason that there hasn't been wider comms about those projects was because of the pre-election period. So I know that we've got Sarah Silk from Comms with us in the back of the room, and I think you can expect that news to be flowing quite fast now over the summer. But we will provide a fuller update later in the year once a few more have got going.
Okay, any further comments before we go to the recommendations? Yeah, no, okay, thank you. So we're being asked, first of all, to note the contents of the report, and second, endorse the proposed capital budget movements reflecting the annual roll forward and rephasing process that's set out in section 5.3 of the report. And that's obviously subject to the agreement of Strategy, Resources and Performance Committee. Everybody happy that we, I don't see any dissent. We happy to adopt that proposal? I see lots of nods. That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin, for your input. We're now going to item 8, which is the corporate performance report, Q4, and that's over to Sue.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. So yes, you have the Q4 performance report. So for the end of the previous financial year, 2023-24, and obviously the detail is all set out in the appendix, which is associated with the cover paper. Just to say that in the March committee, we actually supported some new indicators to more closely align some of our indicators to our corporate ambitions that are set out in our strategic framework. So indicator number 253 is a composite indicator for libraries covering the number of digital assistant events and the number of digital engagements. So that does tie very much into how the library service support digital exclusion, which we've already referred to this afternoon, and also the events and attendance at the libraries presents arts and cultural programme, which obviously focuses on taking those opportunities out into parts of the county that have less access to arts and cultural programmes and activities, and also the number of businesses supported through the Business and Intellectual Property Centre that is operated through the library service. So those were new indicators that we discussed and agreed at the last committee, and now you see some information in relation to those in the appendix today. We've also got another new indicator, number 254, around the number of youth and community organisations supported through the seed funding that we offer. And again, that was something that was discussed at the committee in March. So these additional or replacement indicators, the one around youth and communities, a replacement indicator, is to give a better representation of our work in relation to our ambitions as a council. So that work has flowed through from the previous discussion. Just to say, paragraph 3.2.1 reminds you of the indicators that you agreed at the last committee to remove, and those have been taken out. And paragraph 3.2.2 reminds us of the targets that we've also set since our discussion at the March committee. We just have one red indicator in today's report, and that is the registration of deaths within 5 days. So the poorer performance here relates to a number of factors. We did have staff sickness and so less capacity than we required during that period, but we also had an IT issue at the time, where the system should have preserved appointment spaces for death registration, and those appointments were open to other opportunities such as birth or ceremony appointments, which meant that we fell behind with our target on death registrations within 5 days. I'm pleased to say that that was dealt with very promptly in terms of the IT issue, and that being resolved, and that the capacity is being added to the service as well, following some recruitment around vacancies that we have, and some of those staff are still coming into place. But I wanted to get an update for this committee today, given that this is Q4, to reassure you on this particular indicator, which was reporting red at the end of last year, and that just to say that progress has continued to improve across this service, and that progress has been noted by the General Register Office, which is the national body which oversees registration services, and they are pleased with the progress that we've made and have acknowledged that. And as I say, the full impact of the recruitment into that service we've not yet felt, but as new starters arrive in the coming weeks and months, then actually we're hoping that the capacity we have also will help to improve that situation further. And we have brought in short-term relief staff as well to deal with the backlog. So a more comprehensive response to that, because we're just concerned that that indicator being red is obviously a serious matter given what it's associated with in the registration service. So I just wanted to give you that update. And then we're happy to take any questions on the detail in the appendix. And if we can't answer anything, then we'll take the question away and address it subsequently. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Apologies for getting in first here. My eye was, of course, drawn to that red indicator. I think it has been read in the past as well, but this was quite a dramatic drop. You've explained why the service was unable to make those registrations, but I'm concerned about the implications of not registering a death within 5 days, because I mean, it's generally distressing for any family to have to go through any funeral process. And I don't know what the figures are in Cambridgeshire, but certain religions, for example, required a burial to take place within 24 hours. So I just wondered how that was coped with during this period. I mean, I accept obviously everything you say, that if you've got staff shortages and IT failures, that's what. But what did those families do? Do we have a priority? Is it can we ensure that where it's needed, the service can step in very, very quickly and deal with that type of problem? I mean, there are all sorts of other implications as well, obviously, in hospitals and morgues, and because people also, if they can't keep them there indefinitely. So I don't know how much longer. That's, in a way, the question in my mind: when were they registered? It wasn't 5 days. Was it 10 days? Was it 20 days? We don't know that from the statistic. So this is not about the statistic per se. It's about what it implies. Thank you.
Thank you. We will have to take that away to the head of service to answer that in precise detail about how they handled sensitive situations for families during that period of pressure. So very happy to take that away and have more detail on that. But just to say, in terms of more general understanding of the approach of the registration service around death registrations, then we do have the annual report from the service that comes regularly, well, obviously annually, to this committee. And so that gives you an opportunity as well to ask more detailed questions of the head of service, Peter Gell, as well of that service. But yes, we can certainly follow up on that precise information related to that period of time for you. Yeah, I don't know if Lisa's got any more information on that. No. Okay, we'll follow that up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Lucy.
It's a question about indicator 197, which is about domestic abuse referrals. And the description rightly says that there isn't a right number for this, but there is a very clear distinction between what happened at the beginning of 2022-23 and what has happened since. Is there any explanation for that?
Sorry, just scrolling to it. So this is the self-referrals. Yeah. I'm going to take this away as an action, because looking at the numbers and looking at that 22-23, my understanding is that this probably correlates with the introduction of more funding into the service and the level of referrals that we could take and promotion around that. But I just want to check with the two partnership managers that I'm correct. So I'll take that away as an action.
Thank you. I think it would be really helpful to know that, because actually, although the description saying that there isn't a right number for this is clearly correct, actually, if it's also clear that if you take a certain number of actions, you get more referrals, that would be a fairly clear indicator that there is unmet need out there. And if that is the case, that would be useful and interesting to know. So if we could have some information on that, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex, you're next.
Thank you. I want to ask about the indicators on Cambridgeshire skills, and blue indicators are good, but I was actually wondering how much of this increase is to do with increase in demand in general. So, for example, there's some mention in the commentary around the cost of living and how this led to creating more courses to support around that, and how much it is to do with us and actually the team, the CamSkill team, actually promoting the courses more and more. Because looking at the target and how, of course, we're exceeding the target in terms of number of learners as well as number of enrollments. I think it's great because more people are able to access the skills. I wonder to what extent the budgets we have in the combined authority and adult learning are able to keep up if we continue on this trajectory of actually having more courses and more learners, which, yeah, don't get me wrong, I think it's good that we are able to provide more, but I wonder how much it is to do with us actually doing what I see, and I see around the county as well, a lot more outreach work on those courses and how the budget implications relate to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bueller. So the Cambridgeshire Skills Service came back into the corporate centre about 18 months ago, and there was a new head of service, Tom Malloy, who came into post as well. And I think that marked a bit of a change in approach really to how some of the courses are advertised, but also how we go about recruiting people and utilising our assets within the county council as well. So there's been a stronger focus on delivery through our internal colleagues. So for example, children's services through things like parenting programmes, forest schools through education. So we're doing things a little bit differently. We've also done things like this. There's been a new website. So the approach to promoting some of that work has changed as well. In terms of the growth itself, that was recognised earlier this year by the CPCA. So we've gone from not achieving our targets to overachieving, and that resulted in us being awarded growth funding in May this year. So we've just received additional funding for this term. And we hope that that will be something that's recognised in the months ahead and continues to flow. But our funding, our base funding is confirmed for next year already. So as I say, we're hoping that we'll be able to apply for growth funding once again, and that will help us to make sure that we manage that capacity.
Thank you for the clarification. I think it's very good news on the funding, because my question was around how this can be sustained if we have this increase longer term. So it's good to know that we have to, I guess, reapply for that growth funding in a few months' time. Thank you.
Can't see any other hands, so we've noted the performance indicators and questions as necessary. So thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions on that one. Item 9, which is our last item, that's the agenda plan, appointments to outside bodies and internal advisory groups, panels, and appointment of member champions. Are there any updates to the agenda plan from officers or comments from members at all? We're all on top of everything. That's good. And no questions. Excellent. And Nick, can I just ask you to present appointments for the committee to make, if there are any?
Yep, thanks, Chair. So there are appointments to outside bodies, internal groups, and member champions set out in appendices 2, 3, and 4, respectively. And I'd ask if there are any comments or proposed changes to these. I just note that the ESSOL local planning partnerships, of which there currently or previously 2 separate ones for the North and South, they've now merged as one, but there will still be 2 councillors appointed, and they will be the 2 listed on the sheet. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question, and that's on the Cultivate CAM steering group. Is that still in operation?
No, sorry, that should not be on there. That was disbanded a few months ago.
Yeah,
so that one with those appointments will not be made.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well spotted. Any questions or comments before we conclude the meeting? Ian.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just if you look at the member champions, it would be just useful to know what the member champions have done across the county throughout their 12 months or whatever period. And I just think it would be quite nice if they came to a meeting and did a small report so that members across this county knew what they had been doing for the previous 12 months.
They normally do an annual report, is that right? What they? No, they don't. Okay, no, that's a good point. Perhaps that's something we should think about. Alex.
To comment on that, I'm quite keen to actually have like an update for councillors. I know sometimes we have those in spokes around the work on migration and partnership. So maybe if we can think about a session where I could speak both as member champion as well as our migration officer could give updates around the work across county. I think that would be a useful like briefing session for all members, really, not only on this committee. So I'm quite keen to follow this up if yeah, if Tom, you agree that that's something we can follow up. Thank you.
I think it's something we should follow up from Philippa.
Yes, I'm very aware that given that Councillor Roulat is migrant champion, she knows she gets a trickle of correspondence from me because I identify her as a source of information, and she's very brisk and skillful with it. I'd like to be reassured that's correct behaviour or appropriate behaviour, and it may be that her championship should be better known and understood as long as it doesn't burden her too greatly. As Lisa knows, I'm desperately trying to actually work out who the other community safety champions are around the county and get some county-wide coordination, but it's a fairly slow business, isn't it? I'd be hard put to give any sort of report, but I think anybody involved in these things who wants to write to us ideally should be able to. But I think over to you, Alex, on how you want to filter your correspondence.
Lisa, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, I just wonder if it would be helpful for us as officers to take away an action to compile a report across the champions that sit with this committee. I'm not certain about the constitution, whether members can feed in reports themselves about champion roles. I could check that with democratic services in the constitution, but it's certainly a way that we could progress that, and we could bring back a summary of all of the champion roles and the input and the contact with officers.
Is that an acceptable way forward to members? I think it sounds like a good idea. Yeah, definitely. Okay. If there are no further comments or questions, thank you very much for your attendance, everyone. Committee is next due to meet on the 17th of October, unless we're required to use the reserve date, which is the 12th of September. But as I said, thank you for your contributions and have a safe journey home.